and welcome to HoneyBadgerRadio. My name is Alison Tiemann, and I'm with Hannah Wallen, host of HBR Talk, which will be occurring tonight on the Badger Live Streams channel. If you want to go right there, then just click the little I here. All right, Hannah, are you with me?
I certainly am.
Okay, awesome. All right, so tell me about tonight's topic, why you chose it, and what you plan to talk about. But reverse those.
So this is sort of a continuation of what we've been talking about related to censorship of political discussion and interference, social interference with political discussion. So we've gone through a little bit about how the media manipulates you, how academia is manipulated, manipulation in research, and of course how it's manipulated on social media and everything. One of the big mechanisms that is used for that manipulation is political correctness and the culture surrounding political correctness, and that is primarily used with respect to the progressive stack. So we're going to talk about a little bit about what political correctness is, sort of how it came about in the United States and how it's used against men in terms of men being able to advocate for legal accommodation of their human rights through civil rights, and how that discussion is silenced by political correctness and then the surrounding culture, PC culture.
So do you have any examples of what you're going to talk about?
Well, yeah, certainly. I've sort of delved into the origins of political correctness, the idea of political correctness. It's not actually a concept that originates with feminism, but it is used to defend feminism quite a bit. So you go back through this, the Frankfurt School, which was a set of critics of Marxism. That they're mainly critics of capitalism, but they were critics of Marxism as well. They sort of cherry picked between Marxist theory and some other theories, and then put their own Marxism. They created their own Marxism with hookers and all that stuff, blackjack and hookers, but in any case they then ended up having to leave Germany because that's where they started, but they had to leave Germany because of World War II. Because some of them were Jewish, and Hitler came into power and started killing Jews, and they didn't want to be killed, which is pretty reasonable. It's about the only reasonable idea they had. And so they came to the United States, infiltrated the culture here in the U.S., and began spreading what is commonly known today as cultural Marxism. Cultural Marxists like to say that there is no such thing as cultural Marxism. So that history, I'm going to expand a little bit on that in the opener. There will be a little better sourced information on that in the transcript for the opener. I'll have some links and so on. But enter the 60s, after these guys have been doing this for a while, feminists sort of start picking that up and adding it to feminism. And they sort of, like the blob, they started absorbing the methods of cultural Marxists in engaging the public with PC culture. And so now it's not just unreasonable to argue with a feminist. It's not just that you aren't listening, or that you are too old-fashioned or whatever. No, you hate women. You're a misogynist. There's a label for you. It is now a thought crime. It's politically incorrect, and you can't say that. Now, take that forward into the era where men's rights activism has become more prevalent in society. And we're examining the dynamics of things like domestic violence, sexual violence, the actual dynamics of the workplace versus the pay gap myth, and things like that, with respect to law and policy that is being enacted in women's name basically purportedly for women's welfare, for the purpose of protecting women's welfare, that has aspects that discriminate against men or that disadvantage men. Things like preferences in hiring and promotion in the workplace, or laws that fund services for victims of intimate partner and sexual violence, but only if they're women, or allows the organizations that accept that funding to only care about women and only do things for women, even though there are also male victims. And that doesn't take into consideration female perpetration, even though there are also female perpetrators. And in order for us to be able to talk about that, our society cannot turn around and say, you talked about that, you're a misogynist, you hate women. You hold women accountable for their actions because you hate them. And and it's bad for both sexes, but it's dramatically different for men than it is for women. Women end up affected much the same way as a child that nobody tells no when they're growing up. They don't develop tools for success in their lives. And that sucks, but it doesn't suck nearly as much as being put in jail for 30 years over a false allegation. It doesn't suck nearly as much as being trapped for 30 years in a marriage with an abusive partner, because all of the laws are geared toward keeping you in that marriage, and none of them recognize that you could potentially be a victim of abuse. So PC culture is very dangerous to men specifically, and the men that are actually going to be hit the hardest are men in circumstances that lower, that have lower income, or they have less likelihood of being married to the mother of their children. Men who who their subculture here in the United States sort of revolves around treating women like they are goddesses and queens, and men like they are deadbeats and thugs. So in inner city minority neighborhoods, like primarily minority neighborhoods, you see a lot of this where PC culture leads to men having no recourse at all to overcome their disadvantages. And so of all things, being able to accuse people of being sexist, racist, homophobic, fascists in order to silence dissent against these laws that impact men ends up affecting the very men that the people that subscribe to PC culture are trying to, or at least claiming to, protect.
Well, that kind of hypocrisy is sort of par for the course when you don't really think deeply beyond using a group of people for your own psychological need to feel like a hero.
Exactly.
So what I was asking was, do you have any examples of PC terminology, specific examples of it being used to silence men or consideration of men's issues?
Well, sure. It's politically incorrect, for instance, to state for a father to not want to, or a man who's called a father, to not want to take responsibility for a child that he's told is his child. To the degree that if he turns around and says, "Well, I want proof," he's automatically treated as a deadbeat. And if proof is never given to him and he doesn't concede or comply with the wishes of the mother and the state without that proof, he's treated as a long-term habitual deadbeat. And in all honesty, that's the story of Paul Elam's experience. His ex-wife, well, maybe, I don't know if they were married or not. So, but the mother of the daughter that is allegedly his, that very well could be his, but he's never been given proof that this is his child, has demanded child support, has gone to the media and sold her story repeatedly, claiming that he's a deadbeat. And even though she could easily, the state will do a DNA test for child support enforcement. She could easily get that done. She could easily go to the courts and say, "I want child support, do the DNA test," and they will do it. And she wouldn't even have to pay for it, so it's not going to cost her anything. She's withholding that
And
evidence.
she hasn't even gone to
Right.
get a free DNA test to prove her allegations.
Exactly. She's withheld that evidence, and this, the state's not gonna enforce it. So
That seems really
feminist media, feminist media has used that story repeatedly. I've had that story thrown in my face over and over again to try to suppress Paul Elam's speech and his message, and associate the entire men's rights movement and our advocacy for due process rights, for equal treatment under the law, for equal treatment in the education system, for ending the gender disparity in treatment in family court, for ending the gender disparity in treatment in the prison system. All these things associated with that allegation, which they are presuming true, and you're not allowed to challenge the idea that it's true, because it's politically incorrect for a man to refuse to assume paternal responsibility for a child he has been told is his child.
But has no proof, or
Right.
the individual woman has no proof that it is indeed his child.
So it's misogyny.
Yeah, no, it's unfortunate that we see it that way. And misogyny is, of course, a very politically correct term, which in my experience usually amounts to saying that women's actions have consequences that they should take responsibility for, which I don't understand why that is such a misogynist thing to say, because people are more than just the experiences that happen to them. They're also the responsibilities to their society and the people in their communities and their families. And the individual moral agency, the sense of individuality that the development of recognition of your moral agency creates. I mean, you can't be a hero of your own story if every time you're told something bad happens, you're not to blame.
Right.
And it's somebody else's responsibility to save you, even from the consequences of your own choices. So if you'd like to hear more about this topic on how PC culture is used to silence the discussion on men's issues and men's rights, please head over to somewhere here, or the link will be in the low bar, and listen to Hannah Wallen, Lauren Brooks, and Karen Storn. Are you having a special guest on this today?
Yes, actually. Yes, I am, actually. She's you know her on Twitter as Judith Char.
That should be fun.
Her last name is actually longer than that, and I said it correctly on the show, but if I don't actually have the spelling of it in front of me,
I know exactly
can't
how you
remember
feel.
it, because I see Judith Char every day.
Yeah.
I'll introduce her properly on the show. So if you want to hear that, you have to listen.
Oh yeah, definitely. So thank you for your kind attention, my lovely specimens, and have a wonderful day.